Some coins slip right through our fingers without a second glance, but today, we're zooming in on two that could actually change the way you look at your pocket change forever. These aren't ancient gold pieces tucked away in museums, they're modern state quarters, but with twists that make collectors and seasoned numismatists stop and pay close attention. Let's start with a closer look at the Kansas State Quarter, a coin that proves even the most ordinary-looking change can hide extraordinary secrets. The Kansas State Quarter was released in 2005 as part of the 50 State Quarters program, which had already taken America by storm by then. Minted to honor Kansas admission to the Union back in 1861, this quarter features a pretty straightforward design, a buffalo standing proudly against a field of sunflowers. It's a tribute to Kansas' rich agricultural history and the American bison's symbolic strength. Artistically, it's not the flashiest design compared to some of the more intricate quarters in the series, but its simplicity is part of the charm. Of course, no one expected Kansas to make headlines in the coin world, until an unusual mistake at the mint gave collectors something to get seriously excited about. Some of these Kansas quarters weren't struck quite the way they were supposed to be, and those errors turned a simple 25-cent piece into something truly valuable. One of the most famous errors on the Kansas State Quarter is what collectors affectionately call the "In God We Rust" error. Due to grease buildup on the die at the U.S. Mint, the letter T in the word trust on the obverse side didn't strike properly. The result? It looks like the quarter says, "In God We Rust." And while it might sound funny, this tiny flaw sent collectors into a frenzy. It's a perfect storm for coin enthusiasts. The error is clear, it's striking, and it adds a layer of unintended humor that makes it instantly memorable. Grease errors like this happen when minting machinery becomes clogged with debris or leftover metal dust. Over time, this residue can partially or completely block part of a die, preventing it from pressing the design cleanly into the blank planchet. The Kansas Quarter's missing T is one of the most talked about examples because it's so readable and unintentionally ironic, especially considering the solemn nature of the national motto. Now, let's get into the nitty-gritty of identifying this error. First, you'll want to look at the obverse, or the heads side, where George Washington's portrait is front and center. Under "In God We Trust," the missing or faint T is your golden ticket. Some versions have the T almost completely gone, while others show a partial faint mark where the T should be. There's a spectrum of severity with this error, and that spectrum actually affects the value. Coins with the T nearly invisible are more valuable than coins where it's just slightly faded. It's important to know that these coins weren't intentionally misprinted, that's key in the world of error collecting. Genuine mint errors like this happen purely by accident, which often makes them more desirable because they're not the result of tampering. Collectors respect authenticity, and accidental errors often tell a richer, more organic story than gimmick pieces ever could. So, what kind of market are we talking about for the Kansas, "In God We Rust" quarters? Prices vary depending on the condition, but circulated examples often sell between $50 and $100. Not bad for a coin you might find rattling around in a drawer. Uncirculated examples, however, can fetch anywhere from $250 to $500, depending on overall eye appeal and grade. If you happen to have one graded MS66 or higher by a reputable service like PCGS or NGC, the value can jump even higher, we're talking $700 or more in some cases. Auction records give us an even sharper picture. In 2021, a Kansas, "In God We Rust" quarter graded MS67 by PCGS hammered down at auction for a staggering $2,520. It's rare, but it shows just how high the ceiling can go when you mix scarcity, humor, and pristine condition into one coin. Another example sold at Heritage Auctions for $1,880 a few years back, again in gem mint state condition. That kind of attention isn't limited to hardcore numismatists either. Even casual collectors keep an eye out for Kansas quarters at local coin shows, estate sales, and even flea markets. Beyond the dollar figures, the Kansas-era quarter carries some pretty fascinating trivia. For instance, while the "In God We Rust" variant is the most famous, other Kansas quarters have surfaced with similar grease error issues, like missing parts of the motto E pluribus unum on the reverse. It's a reminder that the minting process, even with all its mechanical precision, isn't infallible. That imperfection is exactly what gives these coins their life and character. There's also some myth-busting worth doing here. Some online sellers have tried to pass off worn or damaged Kansas quarters as, "in God we rust" errors, even when the missing T was clearly due to post-mint damage like heavy circulation or chemical exposure. Genuine errors always show the characteristic soft, filled-in look where the T should be, not a rough, scraped-away mark. Being able to tell the difference, and trusting reputable third-party grading services when in doubt, can save collectors a lot of headaches. Condition is, unsurprisingly, a huge factor in the value of the Kansas error quarter. Circulated versions, those that have been used in everyday transactions, naturally show more wear, especially along the high points like Washington's hair and cheekbone. Wear can make it harder to spot the missing T if the rest of the lettering is degraded, which is why uncirculated coins command so much more money. A Kansas quarter fresh from a mint roll with that missing T still crisp and visible is the ultimate catch. If you're checking your own quarters, focus on areas like the fields, the flat backgrounds, for scratches or bag marks. A Kansas error quarter in mint state condition with clean surfaces and sharp details can easily double or triple the value compared to a dinged-up example. A coin that's been certified and slabbed by PCGS, NGC, or ANAX, especially with a high grade attached, will have a much stronger pull in the marketplace. There's also a sweet spot when it comes to certification. While having your coin graded adds legitimacy, the cost of grading can sometimes outweigh the value boost unless your quarter is in very high mint state grades. Typically, MS65 or higher is where the real premiums start to kick in. Lower grades are still collectible but might not justify the grading fees unless you're building a complete error set for personal satisfaction. Collectors who specialize in error coins often look for examples with additional oddities. If your Kansas quarter has the missing T plus other minor anomalies, like a die crack, die chip, or rotated die, the price can rise even further because multi-error coins are highly prized. In a way, each Kansas, "in God we rust" quarter tells its own unique story, making them much more than just a funny curiosity. A lot of seasoned collectors, and even people who've been casually saving state quarters, don't realize they might already have one of these tucked away. The Kansas error quarter isn't just about money, it's about the incredible moment of discovery, that thrill of holding a real piece of numismatic history born from pure chance. Alright, so that's the Kansas state quarter, a coin that started out honoring the Sunflower State but ended up delivering one of the funniest and most sought-after modern mint errors out there. Now, let's shift gears and take a look at another state quarter that's gained serious fame for a very different reason, the West Virginia state quarter. If the Kansas quarter is famous for an ironic mint mishap, the West Virginia state quarter has earned its place in collectors' hearts for a whole different set of reasons, a combination of beautiful design, notable errors, and surprisingly strong demand in the market. On the surface, it's a peaceful, almost serene coin. But dig a little deeper, and you'll find it's packed with opportunities for collectors who know what to look for. The West Virginia state quarter was officially released in late 2005, just months after the Kansas quarter. It was the 35th coin released in the 50 state quarters program and celebrates West Virginia's admission to the Union in 1863. The reverse side features a gorgeous, detailed engraving of the New River Gorge Bridge, one of the most iconic man-made structures not just in West Virginia, but across the entire United States. It's a marvel of American engineering. At the time of its completion in 1977, it was the longest steel arch bridge in the world, and it remains one of the most photographed bridges to this day. The bridge soars majestically across the coin's design, stretching over the deep gorge with incredible artistry. The engraving does a fantastic job capturing the scale and grace of the structure, with the New River winding its way far below. It's a coin that truly feels alive. You can almost imagine standing there, looking across the misty valley, feeling the breeze sweep by. But what really catapulted the West Virginia quarter into the realm of serious collector interest weren't just its good looks. Like Kansas, West Virginia quarters have several error varieties that have attracted attention from seasoned hobbyists and treasure hunters alike. One of the most important things to know about West Virginia quarters is that many of them suffer from clashed die errors. A clashed die occurs when the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet between them, leaving impressions of the opposing design on each die. As a result, when a proper coin is struck afterward, faint images from the other side of the coin can appear where they shouldn't be. On some West Virginia quarters, you can actually see parts of George Washington's portrait faintly ghosting into the fields of the reverse side, a surreal, almost haunting effect that immediately stands out once you know what to look for. Clashed die examples of the West Virginia quarter range from minor to fairly dramatic, and the value depends heavily on how noticeable the clash marks are. Light clashing might add a modest premium, maybe $30 to $75 depending on condition. But heavily clashed examples, where Washington's silhouette or features are clearly visible against the New River Gorge Bridge, can push the value well into the $200 to $400 range, especially for coins graded MS-65 and up. Another noteworthy error on some West Virginia quarters involves double die obverse, DDO, varieties. These happen when the die shifts slightly between strikes, creating a doubling effect on parts of the coin's design. For the West Virginia quarter, doubling has been reported most often on the words, "In God We Trust," and sometimes along Washington's eye or hair details. DDO errors always spike interest because they're often dramatic under magnification and can be easily verified by collectors. Genuine DDO errors on West Virginia quarters are relatively scarce but not unheard of. Prices can vary wildly based on the severity of the doubling and the coin's condition. A sharp DDO example graded MS-66 could fetch north of $500, while more modest cases in lower mint states might sell for $100 to $200. Of course, beyond specific errors, condition remains absolutely critical when it comes to West Virginia quarters. Like many mid-2000s coins, these quarters were mass-produced in the hundreds of millions, which means finding a basic circulated example isn't difficult at all. However, finding truly high-grade examples, coins graded MS-68 or higher, can be much more challenging and valuable than people realize. An uncirculated, perfectly struck West Virginia quarter with blazing luster and zero distracting marks can bring surprisingly strong prices at auction. For instance, in 2020, an MS-68 example certified by PCGS brought $1,020 at auction, a powerful result for a coin many people still overlook. Even MS-67 examples can regularly sell in the $100 to $300 range when listed properly. An interesting side note here, the New River Gorge Bridge design itself sometimes caused subtle weak strikes on the coins, especially around the fine details of the bridge trusses and river valley. Coins showing strong detail in these areas without flatness are especially prized by top-end collectors because they demonstrate better than average die preparation and striking pressure. Now, let's talk about a few more fun facts. The New River, which the bridge spans, is ironically one of the oldest rivers in the world, despite the name, New. Geologists estimate it's between 260 and 325 million years old, making it older than the Appalachian Mountains themselves. That kind of deep, ancient history woven into the design of a modern coin adds another level of fascination for collectors who appreciate both numismatics and American geography. The New River Gorge Bridge is also the site of Bridge Day, an annual event where thrill seekers from all over the country gather to bungee jump, rappel, and base jump from the bridge into the canyon below. It's a high adrenaline tradition that captures the spirit of adventure, something the West Virginia quarters design reflects beautifully without ever needing a word to say it. Back to the market side of things, West Virginia era quarters, especially those showing strong clash marks or doubling, are often quietly picked off eBay listings, coin shows, and estate sales by sharp-eyed collectors. They don't always command splashy headlines like the Kansas, "In God We Rust," quarter, but within the specialized world of die clash and doubling collectors, they're extremely well respected and increasingly sought after. For collectors focusing on building complete 50-state quarters era sets, the West Virginia examples add some real spice. They're harder to track down in high grades, and the quality control at the mint during this time wasn't quite as tight as it is today, meaning slight anomalies pop up with rewarding frequency for those who take the time to search. As for circulated examples, well, if you have a West Virginia quarter that's seen better days but has a strong clash or doubling, it's still worth pulling aside. Even heavily worn coins with dramatic errors can fetch decent premiums, particularly if the errors are bold enough to be visible without needing a microscope. However, like Kansas, getting a good return almost always requires mint state preservation. If you're hunting for West Virginia errors in your own collection or change jars, a good 10x loop is your best friend. Look for ghostly outlines on the reverse fields for die clashes, or check the motto and face details for doubling. Lighting makes a huge difference. Tilt the coin under a bright, direct light source to catch subtle distortions that might otherwise hide from the naked eye. Ultimately, the West Virginia State Quarter offers collectors a really rich field of possibilities. It's beautiful, historically meaningful, and full of little quirks that can turn an ordinary piece into a true prize. Whether you're searching for dramatic clashes, double die obverse, or simply a top-grade example with all the delicate bridge details intact, this coin rewards careful attention and patient hunting. When you line it up alongside the Kansas State Quarter, what you see isn't just two more state quarters from a big federal program. You see a reminder that modern coins, even ones made in massive numbers, can still deliver mystery, rarity, and real value. It's that unexpected magic, tucked away in our everyday change, that keeps the world of numismatics so exciting, whether you've been collecting for decades or you're just starting to wonder what might be sitting in your old coin jar right now.